Thank you for joining us. It's nice to see some smiling, awake faces here. I'll be presenting today on Content Architecture 101. Sounds very simple, but it's not as simple as it seems to be. All right. My name is Vicki Bertini. I am a Sitecore MVP, solution architect at EPAM Systems. I have been working with Sitecore for a really long time, so I've been around this block many times. I've seen some things. I think I started with Sitecore 6. My first upgrade was Sitecore 6.2 in 2009. That's a whole other talk on those types of integrations, so I won't get into that. I've worked in many different industries, including higher education, healthcare, finance, hospitality, and I currently live in Phoenix, Arizona, so I'm freezing here today. Yeah. You guys have some epic weather here in Minnesota. All right, so today we will be covering a very high level of content architecture, not super high level, but I want to remind everyone this is a good starting point. Everybody's content's going to be completely different, but hopefully this can give you some ideas on places that you can start as far as navigating through your content. So first, I want everyone to understand the importance of content architecture, how to start the effort, because it's really just difficult to get started sometimes. And then once you get on that road, how to initiate the changes, implement the strategies, and then structure your content for long-term stability. So this probably looks familiar. This may be where you started with your content. Everything was really nice and organized, beautiful, you know where to find everything. Looks great, and then it ended up like that one on the left. So I've seen this a lot. As your company grows organically, you gather more data and you use more things, and there's different departments working on different things, so you kind of end up with a mess. Unfortunately, I'd like to tell you that once you get organized, it's going to stay nice and pretty, but it's not. It's going to be very cyclical. So hopefully some of the tips you learn here today will keep it sustainable. All right, so first thing, information architecture. If you do any kind of Google search, you'll see these three intertwined circles. Content it's a mix of the user, the context in which they're using it, which means the platform or environment, and then the content itself. So it is a structured design, which is really important. It's a structured design of information environments. It's the discipline of making content findable and understandable, and this one is super important, organizing content and defining its relationships. Honestly, this is one of the hardest things that you can do when you're addressing your content and its relationships, because as all of you know, there are so many different kinds of contents, and how they are related can often be a little bit fuzzy, so it's going to take a lot of input. When I talk about defining your content and its relationships, this is often done by content modeling. Couldn't think of anything as general as maybe SUGCON. So we have our attendees. We have many attendees at one SUGCON. One attendee might attend many different sessions, and then each session has a presenter and a location. This is very simplified. I wish I could, due to NDAs, I wish I could show you some of the bigger content models that I've worked on. They would not be readable on this screen. You really have to chunk those out. Sometimes you just have to start in one area, do that, and then add on to it. Because if you step back and you look at your big ecosystem of content, it's going to be frightening, and you're not going to do it. All right. So first we'll get this out of the way, understanding the importance of content architecture. You carry a lot of risks when your content is all over the place. Your content can be very inaccurate. Do you have people managing content that shouldn't be managing that content? You know, Bob used to work for the company, and he managed all this content, and he was the SME, but then he left unexpectedly, and now we hand it over to Susan. Susan doesn't know what all this content is, just that I have it and I have to manage it. So, but I'm not necessarily the subject matter expert. Governance. Do we have workflows in place? Do you have interns pushing things out to your public-facing website? Probably not a good idea. Nothing against interns, but they're very inexperienced. There needs to be a gatekeeper. Compliance, oh, this one's so bad. Especially if you're in like healthcare or finance, because they are very heavily regulated industries. And if you push something out that either is mal-timed, you can get fined by the government, or you can be in violation of HIPAA privacy laws, so it can be pretty bad. Security risks. This one's often overlooked. One of, at least our company's core values, not values, it's actually like more of a mandate, is that you only have access to what you need to do to get your job done. And that is really important, because if you have access to something that you don't need to see, I think the last report I read was like 20% of data breaches were internal from people who were looking at things that they did not need to have access to. So everybody spends a lot of time on keeping the bad guys out from the outside, but there's bad guys on the inside too. So that is really important, because when your content is organized in such a manner where you can lock down different areas so that only people who need access to it can have it, it makes your life a lot easier. There's time risks. How much time do you spend looking for stuff? And efficiency, are there too many cooks in the kitchen? Who's been in a meeting before where there was 15 people and there only needed to be 3? Eh? Yeah, and everybody's got an opinion, and it slows things down. So, all right. So what is your cost? You can lose customers. Studies from 2022 gauge the average attention span of an adult online is 8.25 seconds, and the Gen Zers are worse. And I have one living at home. I can attest to this firsthand. You lose an entire quarter of a second of attention span with the Gen Z audience. There's currently about 200 million active websites, so if you lose a customer, they have a lot of choices of places they can go instead of yours. And as an online customer myself, again, I can attest to that. Can your customers trust you? I mean, if you go on a website and you see content that's not relevant, or you see content that's outdated, or it says this in one part of the website and that in the other part of the website, you're kind of like, well, should I trust this website? And once you lose a customer's trust, it's really hard to get it back. Are you relevant? Are you accurate? Is your content reachable, consistent, compliant? Is it fresh? There's nothing more boring than an old, dead website. Time. This is what I mentioned before. How much time's wasted sifting through multiple resources, searching something that doesn't exist at all. Maybe you don't have it in your repository. Tracking down the content owner. Can I use this? Is this licensed? Maintaining irrelevant content. Well, why do we have this content? Well, because we always have. Ugh, worst answer ever. Unknowingly entering or maintaining duplicate content. That one's fun too, especially when you're paying for licensing. Manually entering content. Oh boy, don't get me started. I'm a developer by nature, and we are lazy. So that's why we develop automation, because we don't want to do it manually. Maintaining unfamiliar content. Again, you need subject matter experts. Another cost, infrastructure, my favorite. So you have all this stuff. Where are you going to keep all this stuff? Well, yeah, if you double your database capacity in Azure, for example, it may only go up a few dollars a month, but it's a few dollars a month, and it adds up. The spare change in your couch can add up to $100 over time. So, doubling things, having terabytes, petabytes, can we cut that back? Plus, now I've got this stuff, I also have to pay for backup storage. There's another cost on top of that. What about consulting fees when I lose control of my content and I have to call in a consultant? We're expensive, I'm telling you. Licensing, oh boy. Software programs that you don't need. 5 CMSs, why do we have that? We could have 5 websites on Sitecore, or we could pay for 5 CMS systems. Which one would you rather do? Third-party products, copyrighted material, there's a legal risk right there. Subscriptions, you have subscriptions to things that you just don't need anymore. So you can start edging off your finance, your budget, and making it a lot more manageable. Chaos. I do this myself, by the way. Pretty proud of it. Chaos ensues when there's lack of governance. No compliance enforcement, huge risk for a company. Your employee frustrations build, your customers' frustrations build. Team delays, costs spiraling out of control. Any of this sound familiar? Things will get worse, I guarantee, unless you make changes. So, how do we do that? How do we start that journey? This may be where you're at right now. Fictional scenario based on years of experience. What I usually walk into on the first day of a new project. We've got stuff everywhere, duplicates, inconsistent branding. It's a maintenance nightmare. People are frustrated. We don't have any governance. We're bleeding money. We need to be here. We need to have a single source of truth. We need to have streamlined content. We need to have consistent branding. We need to be organized, automated, centralized, easily accessible, secure, role-based access, copyright enforcement, cost efficient. Okay, so here's where we're at, but it takes as much energy to wish as it does to plan. So let's stop wishing and let's start planning. What does this look like? Start asking questions. As a solution architect, I am really good at asking questions. I could have 15 more slides with questions on it. But we feel like Milton here in the office. We got stuff everywhere. We need a little organization. How much content do we have? What's it being used for? Where's it located? All valid questions to start asking around. Identify the problems. You ask enough questions to enough people, and there's going to be some central themes that start to surface. You're going to want to get ideas from all stakeholders. And like they mentioned in a talk I was in the other day, which was excellent, even people who aren't using the website or who aren't using your apps, people just who know the business, they have insights that are absolutely invaluable. They may know of resources that you never even thought of. So when you get input as far as what is hurting people and what their frustrations are and what solutions they want to see in place, you get less resistance from these people when changes are made because they know that they had a stake in this. Many perspectives. It gives you great coverage of risks. Things you may never have thought of, you know? Even being a solution architect, I don't think of everything. I love listening to other people talk about what their particular perspectives are because it's amazing because you have these aha moments like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. But you can't have one person to tie it all together. That is allowed. This is super important. It's something I preach all the time. Step out of your role and step into the role of somebody who has to find something. So many times we have blinders on. You know, I'm a developer, I have task A, I'm gonna do this. I'm a solution architect, I have this task, I'm gonna do this. Have you ever developed a website and just gone so far down the rabbit hole you couldn't get out? I used to have this woman I worked with named Emily. She was my favorite QA person ever. She was about 75 years old. She just did random things around the office. Everybody loved her, treated her like a grandmother. She was the best QA tester I had. I could develop a website and put it in front of Emily, and she could break it so good. So, like, why did you click on that? You know, I'd say, okay, try to find this on the website, and she would go over here, and she'd be like 7 layers down in the corner, and well, how do I get back to the homepage? And I'm like, that's a good question. So I'd put it way back to the homepage. She was the best tester. Everybody needs an Emily when they're testing, but especially for content. You do. You have to omit your personal bias. You have opinions, that's okay, but they have to mesh into the greater good. So anyhow, as you go through this, you're gonna identify consistent, specific pain points. Is it security, inefficiencies, costs? Maybe all of the above, maybe not. So the solutioning process, good idea. Identify your goals based on the pain points. Separate the have-to-haves from the nice-to-haves. This is really hard. A have-to-have is, if it wasn't there, would this still work? The nice-to-haves is if it wasn't there, it wouldn't work as nice, but it would still work. So that's a good thing to put along. Rank your tasks in order of importance. Everybody, not everything can be critical and high priority. That's not how the world works. Somebody has to be last. Set a benchmark. This is super important. Don't get caught with your pants down when your executive management comes to you later and says, great project, what were the benefits? Can you show me? Because I'm telling you, as a former executive secretary about 100 years ago when I started my career, executives like graphs and numbers. So take a snapshot at the beginning. Everybody forgets this part. Where are we right now so that we can show where we end up and what the benefits are? And then, of course, document. Map your content into a content model. This is going to be a really, really painful process. It's going to take a lot of time. But when you identify your relationships and your content types, it's going to be a lot easier to bucket them together and make sure that you can find them easily. Then determine a rollout strategy. Everybody thinks there's just one way to roll things out. Nope. There are so many different ways. There's all at once, flagship, and line in the sand. There's probably more, but these are my 3 favorites. So all at once means we stop work, we do the thing, we roll it out, we shove it all out there, and then it's all fixed, and everybody goes on with life. That one's rarely done and rarely successful if it is tried. There is the flagship. So it's like, okay, we're going to pick this group of people, North America. Let's say North America, we're global. We're going to roll it out in North America, or we're going to roll this out in Tennessee. And then you roll it out. Everybody's like, that's so cool. I want to be a part of that. And then you start getting other rollouts, and you start building and building and building. That's a really nice one. I've seen that work very well. Line in the sand means nothing else goes in the old system, period. All the new stuff goes into the new system, and then we'll start migrating things over into the new system as business goes on. This is good for business continuity. I've seen that be very successful as well. And then, the B word, budget, finance, things like that. You have to identify who's going to do the work. Is it going to be internal? Is it going to be client? Are you going to bring in a third party in to do the work? Identify a high-level timeline. Doesn't have to be super specific right now. That's what project managers are for. But you need to be able to say, okay, well, this effort is going to take a month, a week, a year, 2 years. Super important. Do any tools or licensing need to be purchased to reach these goals? This is a good thing to know up front, because you don't want to be in the middle of your project and go, oh, oops. We've used up 50% of our budget and found out that we need licensing for this tool that's kind of part of our project. So very good things to identify at the beginning. And does my team know how to use this? Is anybody qualified to train, or do we need to hire somebody to train or to send them to training? There can be costs incurred there as well. When I spoke of benchmark goals, these are good things. Just a few ideas. If you want to set benchmarks, we're going to reduce the number of web pages from this to this. We're going to increase performance from this to this. We're going to reduce our footprint in our databases from this to this. I won't go through all of them, but this is definitely a good place to start. Communicate the plan. This part is super fun. Expect pushback. There are going to be people that don't like change, and that's fine. It's hard. And there's fear also. That's a good source of a lot of pushback, is fear. People, is this going to replace my job? Is this going to do something that I used to do, and are you just going to let me go because you don't need me anymore? What you need to do is include them in this plan. Highlight the fixes for shared pain points that hopefully they were a party to, putting together. Get visual. People like pictures and factual data. Identify the steps to get there. Use your benchmark goals to keep everyone motivated. Use that throughout the project. That is really important. Remember, here's where we were, here's where we're at now, here's where we're going. And then delegate. That's my favorite one, because I'm a programmer, we're lazy. So implementing the strategy. The purge, my favorite part of any project. Going through and having a moving sale on your content. When you move across the country, you got to get rid of stuff, right? Everybody's had a moving sale, getting rid of this junk, that junk. I don't want to pay to have it hauled across the country. Use your analytics and metrics. What are people using? What are they not using? Why do we have this? Is this compliant with our brand guidelines? Is it outdated, duplicated, deleted? What can be archived? Anything? This is my fictional company with 4 departments. And we have a lot of content, you can see. It's all in a jumble. These departments are autonomous. They're separated. They're working in their own little silos. I've gone around and I've seen all of this stuff. I've gathered input from all 4 departments. So now, what do? I go in and identify these things need to be gotten rid of because they're duplicated, they're irrelevant, we don't use them anymore. Nobody knows what it's for, we're just maintaining it just because. Get rid of that stuff. This is already looking better. I like it. So we have a lot less things to deal with here because now we've gotten rid of all of the fluff and stuff that we don't need. And now we've got this big, massive area here that looks a lot better, that all the departments can have access to. Now, of course, I'm leaving out the obvious facts that some of it may need to be secured down and some departments may not need access to certain things, but that's not the point of this talk. This talk is just, getting your stuff weeded out, getting it into a manageable bundle that now you can take a look at it. Now what do? Now it's time to move the content. You've made your organization, you've identified things that are the same, you've identified the teams who will be migrating. Put someone in charge of Emily. Pick Emily, she's good. Put someone in charge of quality control. There needs to be one person that knows the project really well, that are kind of the gatekeeper for all of these teams that are migrating this stuff over. And they need to go, yeah, that wasn't supposed to come over, that was supposed to be deleted, or yes, that's supposed to go here, and yes, that's supposed to go there. So they're basically your traffic cop. They'll keep things running smoothly. And then review the plans with the teams involved. What's going to be migrated? Where will it be migrated? When should it be migrated? And how it should be migrated? And then go. And then at the end, you may end up with something that looks nice like this. This is a lot less anxiety-inducing, in my opinion. If I need an icon, I go there. If I need a logo, I go there. I know that is my source of truth. This is the right logo for my website. If I need content, I go up here. Copyrighted media is here. It's all in one place. I can prove my licensing, how many people are using it, and I can stay within the compliance of my license for copyrighted media. So structuring content for sustainability. This is where we'll nerd out just a little bit. I'm using Sitecore XP because that's what I know. That's my baby. So this is an example of how we have structured websites to do really effective content sharing. At the top of your content tree, you'll have areas for global information. It is broad enough to be used across any website. This is where you put your global things. Your custom content, site content, we'll get to that in just a minute. But to expand on this a little bit, your global content would include something like this, like colors of the rainbow. Those probably aren't going to change. Maybe blog articles that are applicable for the entire company, countries of the world. That maybe have to be adjusted every now and then as countries change their name and whatnot, but they're generally stable. Global advertisements, news articles, global dictionaries, things that a lot of websites use, like the word about, the word back, the word close. Global settings, you may or may not have global languages. You may have different websites. At that point, you would put them in the site level. But if you have languages that are used across all of your websites for the entire company, you would put them up at the global level. Maybe legal notices, privacy policies, etc., things that have to be shared across everywhere. The next one is custom content for a page. Now, this is content that's only applicable for a specific page. So you can see here, under my home page, I have a data folder. I have this really neat thing here that I'm not using. Oh, I guess it's not working. Oh, there it is. So you've got this data folder under the home page, and this only contains content that is applicable to the home page here. So my home page is going to have a custom header, it's going to have a custom footer, it's going to have some text boxes that are only applicable to this page, not any other page in my website. And then these demo pages here might have data that's only applicable to these demo pages. So under this data section, this is not shared with anybody. It's not a candidate for reuse within the site or within the global environment either. And then the last level is site content. So this would be content that is general enough that it can be shared across the entire site, but not necessarily just on one page or globally at all. So you might have locations, like this might be a Minnesota website, and you might have locations that would be applicable to the entire Minnesota website. So I just put some test data in there. There can be a footer and a header for this site, SEO that's only applicable to the site. So this is a really good way to kind of chunk out your content so that it can be reused, and it's very effective, and you have lower maintenance because you're not duplicating content across your Sitecore entity. You can do something similar in the media library. This is the media library now, not the content tree. Global media is stuff that you can use across the entire organization and all websites. We've got, anyone familiar with Helix? We've got our feature media, our foundation media, our custom site media. Feature media would be anything that was applicable to a specific feature. So like maybe your search feature would have the little magnifying glass. I would say probably the most challenging part of organizing this is some stuff is so subjective. You get some content. It's like, is the little search icon an icon? Would that go in the icons folder, or would it be under search? I usually fall back to, if I were to rip out a certain feature, would I miss the content that was in there? Would I miss the little magnifying glass if we didn't have any search on our website? Probably not, because that's specific to search. So if that's your answer, that's where you take it and you place it into the feature folder. Remember, organizing is a journey, not a destination. This means, and I know that this is Megan's favorite word. Yes, journey, it's a journey. But don't think of content organization as something that is finite, because it is never going to be finite. It's always going to be cyclical as you get more content in. But if you have a solid strategy, when that new content comes in, you know exactly what to do with it and exactly where to put it. Next, and this is a lost art, I'm telling you. I don't see this very often. Template simplification. I entered a contract one time with a large healthcare organization, and I went in and they had a template that I swear in a stack of Bibles was 75 fields long, and they used it for every web page. And I go, all right, so you need all these for every single page? And oh no, on these pages we only fill out these, and on these pages we only fill out those. And I'm like, why don't you have multiple templates? Oh, well, this is the template we use, so we just keep adding it to this one. Okay, that's interesting. This is going to save your content authors just copious amounts of time if you can structure your templates so that if I fill out every single field, and I don't necessarily need every field, don't get me wrong on that, because it's going to be much easier if I have fields that if I fill in every single piece on this template here, it's going to show up somewhere on that web page. That's my gauge as to how well my templates are put together. If I fill out every single thing and there's things that don't show up on the page or that don't need to be there, then why is it there? Why is it on the template? It is not against the law to have many different templates for many different things. At this point, I was going to switch over to a demo, but I chickened out on that one because it's really hard to get back to the right slide on PowerPoint. So I spent last night in my room creating a couple of PowerPoint for things for you. So if I'm going to create these 2-page content pages, one of them requires a title and a body. The other one requires a little more information. It's maybe a news article, and it requires a subtitle and a short description. I can do that pretty easily by setting up I personally call them template shards. I don't know if that's an official term, but I've always called them template shards. What these are little mini templates that you can include while you're building out your templates. So things that normally go together, like peanut butter and jelly, you can put those in the same template shard. But if you happen to be a person that likes peanut butter, jelly, and banana is a whole separate entity. You can pull that in too, but you don't have to have it in the same shard. So for example, here, when I pull base content into my template that I'm building, base content contains title and body. But if I need a little more, here, now I have, on this one, you can see I have title and body, but I also need subtitle and short description. So as you can see here, I've set up a little shard called subtitle that only contains the subtitle field, which I can pull in, and another one that contains short description, which only contains a short description field, which is really handy because if I have other templates that maybe doesn't need the subtitle, but does need the short description, I've got that right there. Now I can build any kind of template that I want to, and it's relevant, and I can put validation rules on it, and I can restrict things, and I can make things visible. It's a beautiful thing. Definitely a lost art, because I know the tendency is, oh, need a new field? Oh, let's just throw it on the main template. No, that doesn't work out. It may work out well at first, but over time it turns into a huge train wreck. This is a little known corner of Sitecore that every marketer I talk to knows nothing about. This has been in here since Sitecore 6, people, okay? And so few people use it. To use it, you need to configure your auto-publish, first of all. We usually, and your auto-publish rules are yours. We usually go in maybe every 6 hours and do an auto-publish, and it just goes through every 6 hours, and it processes. You can set go live dates on either items or versions, which is pretty cool, because if you have maybe a new version of a page, you don't have to bring the whole page up and take the whole page down. You can actually just display that version of the page in a specific time period. You can set archive dates, email reminders. When I worked at Roosevelt University in Chicago, we used this very much for our news articles. We had a policy where news articles were only showing on the website for 2 years. So when a news article was created, we auto-populated the publishable to date for 2 years from the date that it was created. And then we didn't have to do anything. After 2 years, that news article automatically came down when our auto-publish ran, and the next day, we had the archive date set, and it took it out of the content tree and stuck it in archive. So if it was there, if we ever wanted to go look it up again, because we had a retention policy, but didn't have to lift a finger. And believe me, that was good for me, because I was the one maintaining all the content, so that was a big deal for me. Archive dates. Now the difference between publishing settings and archive dates, just for those of you who may not know, is publishing settings just mean that it will or will not show on the website. Archive means it will or will not show in the content tree itself. So if you unpublish something, it will be visible. Excuse me. It will be visible until it's archived. And then it will come through an archive. Now the reason I have the little warning symbol across this is actually, the first column is dates, the second column is times. I've been telling Sitecore that they need to take the times out completely for years because they're useless, completely useless. What happens is when you set your auto-publish and you save your config file, your auto-publish starts from the date that you save, or the time that you save your config file. So if you save your config file at 2:43 p.m., the next 6 hours, it will run at 8:43 p.m., right? So whatever time that you set in here is completely irrelevant, because it just means that at this time, it's eligible to be unpublished. Now, it may happen 4 hours later. People's expectation is that it's going to come down at noon. Nope, it will not. And then you'll have a call at 12:05. Why is it still on the website? It's, well, because the auto-publish hasn't run yet. So use that with great restraint. And then finally, long-term success depends on thoughtful planning, commitment, effective tools, consistent oversight, sustainable processes, and teamwork. It really does take all of these things. Like I said, I've been around this block several times. Each scenario has looked different, but in the end, it was completely worth it. We have seen, reductions in not performance. No. Oh God, take that one back. No. We have seen performance problems greatly reduced. We have seen teams reporting time saved of upwards of 60%. We have seen costs drop on us in a certain department by over 35%. It is worth it. It's a hassle, it is time consuming, but it's definitely worth the exercise. I thank you for joining today. If you have any questions, we can address them now. If you're shy and you would like to reach out to me directly, feel free to reach out to me on my, my lifelines, which is my email and my LinkedIn. And yeah, that's what I have for you today. And I have to put a plug in for our sponsors. I'll go back to the contact screen, but I have to show that.
I have two questions, but they're both easy.
No.
So when you were talking about perspective, you know, we are not writing for ourselves, we're not organizing a website for ourselves, and I'm a big believer in usability testing, especially card sorting, things like that. So you're putting information in places people expect to find it. However, when budgets start getting tight and you're doing estimations, unfortunately, that's one of the things that clients very often like, oh, let's cut that piece out.
It's always the first thing.
It's either that or research, you know.
Right.
We know our users, we know. So like, how do you convince them that it is worth the time and money and effort to test your, you know, the usability and what you call things and where you put things?
Well, that's a hard one, actually. That's a very hard question.
Sorry.
No, no. It really depends on, you know, on who you're talking to. People who have never done usability testing are usually the hardest ones to convince. Usability testing can be done. It doesn't have to be big and fancy. You don't have to go out and hire Deloitte to go out and, you know, survey the world or anything. You can actually do a small focus group, even internally, just from for departments that aren't involved maybe in the project, and say, hey, you know, A or B, or whatnot. Sitecore actually makes it really easy to do A/B testing within Sitecore itself, and we've had some great success with that. You know, it's you cannot make somebody believe it. You just, as a professional, you have to remind them that they hired you because of your expertise. You have seen success in this, and it should not get cut. Unfortunately, it usually is, because there's things like, you know, developers that need to be paid, and infrastructure that needs to be bought. So all you can really just do is address the, you know, just say, I appreciate your input, but this is really important, because you need to know that what you're putting out there is what your end users want to see.
Agreed. My other question, which I hope is actually easy, is when you had the slide with the, you know, very nicely organized closet and then the, you know, kind of disaster on the other side, to me, that's like every media library I've ever seen of any client. And when we build a new website, we always tell them, look how nicely, it's like talk to my kids, look how nicely organized this is. Just try and keep it this way, guys, okay? And then you come back, you know, 6 months or a year later to do something for them, and it is a nightmare. So do you have any recommendations on like how often should they be cleaning out the junk drawer that is their media library, getting duplicates out of there?
Well, oh, wow. It depends on, like, first of all, the size of the company and how actively they're using their media library. If you have a larger type of company, they're probably using Content Hub anyway. People have a tendency to take nicer care of Content Hub because it's you know, taggable, and it's a really good product. And I actually do a lot of work in Content Hub. That's why I'm plugging it. Media library. There's some things you can do. I mean, you can set rules up that don't allow people to upload things into certain areas, like the root. You can also set up things that that restrict, like sizes of media. You know, back in the university, I had it set at, well, this was way back, like 4 megabytes. I know that's not big, so don't shoot me, but but yeah, I used to get calls all the time. Oh, I tried to upload this, but you can do a lot of things with scripting and whatnot. But as far as, you know, as far as cleaning things out, just running reports, you can set a time, like, you know, every 6 months we're gonna review, or every like I said, it depends on how active you are in your media library, but I'd say every 6 months to a year is probably a good time to just go and review what's in there. Is it where it's supposed to be? Is anybody using it? The great thing about media library is it will actually tell you how many people are, how many pages are using that. And if it's 0, get it out of here,
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. Hi. It's actually really interesting seeing the housekeeping slide because that's right in the wheelhouse of what I'm doing for one of our customers. She has an intranet, and in the intranet, they've had a content retention problem with the content just sitting there becoming almost a dumping ground, I guess. So we're trying to add some structure and governance around keeping content. In the organization, there's a lot of churn. There's a lot of business units being reorganized. So sometimes it's also hard to find the originator of the content. So we're actually implementing some reports based on the content that's actually there. One of the reports specifies, give me all the content items where content has been unpublished for X number of years. So we review that, and is it needed? No. Then we can take action on it. Or then there's also a report where a content has been unpublished and also untouched for a longer period of time, then it's automatically deleted. So that's one of the things. And I guess one of the questions I had too is it's pretty similar to the example you were giving us around news items. We also have articles. Obviously, they have a relevancy sunset date.
Right.
You mentioned 2 years. Is that what you would recommend in general for that time period?
It really depends on the article. I mean, our general rule is 2 years.
2 years.
I've seen one. Some industries actually have pretty strict retention policies. I think finance is something like 5 years. It really depends on what type of content that it actually is. Personally, I think 2 years, after 2 years, news gets kind of stale. It could be something that needs to be expired after even maybe 6 months. I mean, it could be, hey, come look at our new product. Well, it's not new after about 6 months, right? So, I mean, just because that's your policy, you can bend that with certain types of content that don't need to be, in the span of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the same applies to other pages on the site. We run this report on different pages, and if they're published but untouched, maybe whoever was managing that piece of content is no longer with the organization.
Right. That's always a huge problem.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. That's what we figure, and that's something we're just trying to structure. But yeah, I was just interested in seeing what your thoughts are on that. You mentioned the archive as well. We're actually not using it at the moment. We're just doing a complete delete. In what cases is the archive? Like you mentioned, the content retention policies. Do you recommend it always going in the archive for that set period of time and then deleting from there, or what's the best practice for that?
There's real no best practice around that. I mean, it depends on your industry. Again, I know at the university we used to have to keep things on hand because we would have students that would come back and say, well, on your website it said that this degree program was blah, blah, blah. And we're like, yeah, actually it didn't, and you have to pull it out of archive. And you have to, prove that sometimes in a court of law. So I've been involved in several instances where we had to pull things out of archive for a lawsuit. So it really just depends on, the boundaries of your industry and your company. There's nothing wrong with deleting things that truly, I will truly never use this again, like an old logo or something like that.
Right.
But things like articles, blog posts, anything that could be used in a court of law, I guess, is a good candidate for an archive.
For sure. We also have a legal hold requirement, which sounds like the same thing.
Right. PDFs are good to put in there as well.
Right.
Or some people actually have an archive repository, which isn't truly archived, but it is live.
Yes.
So it's actually accessible on their website under archives, but it's live content. It's just organized as archived.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Makes
it's
sense.
not really archived, but it.
All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Continuing the archive questions, are redirects automatically put in place when you archive something, or is that something you would have to manually set up?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Yeah, we did not ever set up sitemaps to our content for like news because of the archive policies. So probably wasn't good. I mean, this was back in 2009, 2010 before, we really got a great handle on SEO. But yeah, you would have to set up possibly some sort of script that would run through your, know what your dates are, and then maybe run through and do a check, like a ping check, to see if that content still existed. And then you could have it remove it, depending on how you build your sitemap as well, too, because a lot of them are automated through PowerShell scripts. But yeah, there's a lot of ideas around that, but I don't recommend anything manual ever. So I'm thinking through all of the PowerShell scripts we could write to make that happen.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.